Good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Sarlos. I'm Kelly.
Good morning. I'm Karen.
We wanted to just take a moment before we start to do show notes as usual, but also to let you know that if you're just listening by audio today, our podcast is coming to you from Zoom. So the quality will shift once we actually welcome our guest onto the show. Because we are still in COVID times, Amanda Cooley is going to be with us today via Zoom. Yep. So please adjust your volumes for that. As for show notes, though, as usual, we have our Evening with Medium events still scheduled for 2020. We're just sort of waiting to see, as the rest of you are, if those are going to fly. So July 24th, August 28th, and December 4th are the slated events. If you held tickets for the April ones, they will be honored at the door for July. If you cannot make the date in July, you have until the end of May, so May 31st, to request a refund in full. You just need to email us at info@bysarlo.com, indicate the name that the tickets were reserved under and how many that you would like refunded.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Sips of Sanity is a second podcast series that Kelly and I are passionate about. It's all about spiritual intelligence and emotional intelligence. We give you a toolkit every month. There are 5 mini shows that run from 10 to 15 minutes. The group of 5 is presented in the very first week. The very first show is always present. Oh, for the love of Pete.
What is it, Karen? What is it actually?
It's available.
Oh, great. Okay.
It's always available at bysarlo.com. The remaining 4 are at patreon.com/bysarlo. And Kelly's going to give you more information about Patreon.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention too, because we're on video now and we have been since July 2019, that the first episode of Sips of Sanity is always available on our YouTube channel. If you want to subscribe there, you can actually watch the first show as well. But as for Patreon, that is our paid membership. It is a tiered program, so there's different tiers that you can opt in and out of depending on the benefits that you're looking for. Sips of Sanity is in our light roast. That will make more sense to you if you visit and peruse the site. We've titled them just fun coffee titles to go with our shows. Mm-hmm. But we offer a plethora of tools. So Sips of Sanity, reflective questions, habit trackers, journeying experiences, discussions, interviews, all kinds of things, including in our top tier, the red eye category. Your name gets entered into a monthly draw for a free half-hour session, which is fantastic. Karen and I trade off months. So if you do want to look at those, you can head over to patreon.com/bysarlo. Prices are in US dollars. We are hoping that will change at one point, and we will certainly excitedly let you know when that happens. But please be aware that they are US dollars. Everything gets charged on the first of the month. And during COVID times, we are still offering if you need and want to be a part of Patreon but can't afford it, you can let us know and we will waive your fee for the month. We would rather you have access to the content than have to leave if you're already there or feel discouraged from joining altogether. Mm-hmm. And just in regular times as well, Patreon makes it very accessible that if you want to jump around categories from month to month, you can. You can leave for a couple months, come back, go up in categories, go down in categories. It's all based on the kind of experience that you want out of it. So you can take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then last but not least, our business is open as usual. We are still doing sessions all over the world via Skype, FaceTime, telephone, and Zoom. Also WhatsApp, pardon me.
Yeah.
So you can book your session no matter where you are in the world, and those sessions are just as efficient and accurate. You don't need to worry about that. And you can record those sessions as well, so you don't need to wait until these crazy times are over. We are here to support you.
A lot of people are asking how to pay for a session if you're calling from somewhere else in the world or in our own province or country. You can do an e-transfer, and we also take Visa, MasterCard, and American Express.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you have questions, just email us at info@bysarlo.com, no matter what that question is, whether it's about something we've discussed or you have certain topics that you'd like to hear on the show, let us know. Ready to get into today's show?
I sure am.
Okay, we are welcoming senior yoga instructor Amanda Cooley, and we hope that you enjoy. Amanda, welcome.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
We are so happy to have you back.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here.
It's been a little while. It's awesome to have your face back on the show and for listeners to learn from you again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, in our introduction, obviously, we introduced you as a senior yoga instructor. Now, we didn't really express our intention, though, and I want that to be clear to listeners. And that is, we love the way you educate. So we wanted to bring someone on who could educate them about things they can do for themselves to keep their sanity, keep themselves healthy. And when you and I were discussing the importance of this show and the content that we wanted to bring up, you mentioned something about like getting like befriending their house.
Yeah.
And I love how you worded that.
That's nice.
Yeah. Thank you. I often say like befriend your floor and, befriend all of the equipment that you use or the yoga props. And now it really is about, doing it at home, like befriending your home and what that looks like and, the different areas of your home that you enjoy. So
now, I want to be clear too, because part of the intention, this isn't just about having you on to instruct a class. This isn't about, as you know, the proper word for it is the asanas or the positions. We're not heavily focusing on that at all. This is about the 8 limbs, so the way that you live. And that was the importance of having you on the show, we thought, so that people could really get either in touch with themselves for the first time or back in touch with themselves, or learn a different way to connect to others in their home.
Or how about just understanding more what yoga is? Because I think, well, I know when I first started in yoga, I thought that yoga was just, you're going to stretch me. I had no idea you were going to strengthen me. I had no idea you were going to change my range of motion or my flexibility or help my organs. I had no idea that it was also breathing and that it was also a way of living a life. When you started talking about the asanas, I was like, what is that?
Right.
I didn't even understand it. I just thought it was all stretch.
Yeah, yoga is not just asana. It is a holistic practice. So you live your yoga every day, and my teacher used to say, nobody can do your yoga for you. And while I appreciate all the stuff that you just said, Karen, about, I'm teaching you how to move your organs and I'm teaching you how to breathe and I'm teaching you how to, just move and stretch and strengthen. If you didn't show up, there would be no practice, right? So it really does take dedication, hence why it's a lifelong practice, because you could get on, and let's just focus on asana, but you could get on your mat one day and your body can feel a certain way. And then the next day you can do the exact same pose, but have a completely different experience in it. And I think that speaks highly about our interactions as well, right? You can really enjoy somebody's company one day and the next day you could just like not really, mesh well with them. And,
I love that parallel.
Yeah. And all the experiences that we're going through right now too, like we're on high stress and anxiety and everybody is functioning in a different way. So, you might think somebody, and then with this experience, just it turns them into a different person. So so how to live yoga is sort of just being open to different perspectives. Yeah.
I like how you said that you can go to your mat, do the same pose each day, and have different experiences in the very same pose. Because I do think some people might listen to this podcast show and think yoga's boring. Some people think, oh my God, I can't sit still. I can't be alone with my thoughts. I don't want to sit still. A squirrel. Like my personality is just, I'd rather get out and garden. I'd rather get out and be busy. And it's like they don't realize that they could get out and garden and do the very same gardening thing, but do yoga and bring all of the teachings of yoga into the gardening.
Oh, I love that. So there's this phrase in yoga, it's called pratyahara, and it basically just means like concentrated focus or direct focus. And essentially that's what anybody is doing when they're gardening. They're so involved in what they're doing that they have no time to think about anything else. Or that's the hope, right? I often think about the musician who is just so involved in the chords that they're playing, or trying to take what they hear in their head and bring that out into the world. I think about the artists, the painters, anybody who has that creative brain on any different level. Cooks, right? You're trying a new recipe. You are so involved in the task. You are so involved in that concentrated focus, that direct focus, that there's really nothing else that you're thinking of. And Mr. Iyengar, BKS Iyengar, he used to call this meditation in action, right? Because you're doing an action, but it literally is meditation because you're so concentrated.
I want to call that the show.
Yeah.
I need help spelling the name though.
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah. So absolutely, the gardener can take the tools of yoga as the 8 limbs of practice into their everyday life, into their garden, into their hand movements, and cultivating growth as well is also something that we do in yoga. And that's such a beautiful thing when you're gardening, because you can see it grow.
I want to say the same thing to all the accountants that are listening and the lawyers.
Yeah.
And all of the people in construction and in, at cash registers and retail. I want to say to the daycare workers, I want to say it to every single profession, because boy, Amanda, do I ever want that quality to be present in my surgeon. Like, I want my surgeon to be so freaking focused. All he can see or she can see are my whatever organ or whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So as humans, we can really value that. Oh my God, if I think of a painter painting my bedroom or something, she better be focused, because I don't want that color on my white ceiling, right? We want that razor sharp focus, and we value it in certain professions. But I think if we truly value our life experience in every single soul, every single human being, then I want that for the person who's bringing through my groceries. I want it for each person.
I have less razor sharp focus since your dog entered the background, but I'm
is
okay
looking
with
at
it.
us.
Yeah, there'll be many cameos by Lemmy today, I'm sure.
Yeah, I really love this concept, and I don't want to dumb it down by any means. But for anyone listening, like, be where you are.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the importance. And I think about when I'm just standing in front of another person conversing, I'm hoping that they are hoping for that same energy.
Yeah.
Where they're not on their phone, or they're not thinking about my phone's vibrating in my pocket. It's not, oh, this is exhausting, I need to go make dinner. Like, I just want them to be consumed by the conversation that we're having, so that this energetic exchange is valued.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
100%.
that's, as you're saying, like, you're well, we're concentrated in our homes physically, but are we concentrated on the quality of our interactions, whether it is your task, whether it is your physical practice, or your interpersonal interactions?
Yeah. And I want to just touch on a point of what Karen said before about people thinking that they get bored doing yoga, and they would rather be doing something else. So I did practice yesterday morning, and I very much felt that way. So this is what I sort of talking about a little bit before too, that and there's so much high anxiety right now that sometimes it's really hard to just be. So if we're struggling with that while on our mats, and I'm just using my own example yesterday, I'm going to be accepting of what's happening in the moment for me. And I'm going to constantly try to bring myself back. But if I'm having trouble doing that, then it's okay too. So this is what I did. I'm laying on my belly and I'm working a little bit of a back bend or a back extension. And I'm just not like, I'm not into it. It feels good. I get that it feels good. I'm totally connected with the feel good, but my mind is just not there. And I can't keep bringing it back. So I have a stack of magazines beside my yoga mat, and they're all yoga magazines. So I literally took the yoga magazines, and on the front cover of the magazines, I read through like, okay, well, this magazine is about this today. Well, okay, well, I want to read about that. I want to know about that. So I open it up to the page. I sit in my posture, or I'm still in my posture, but yet I'm flipping through a magazine and getting some really good tidbits and tools for my yoga practice. So that's just another way that you can sort of quote unquote do your yoga, right? So I think that's super cool. I'll just kind of bring it back to the gardener, right? The gardener is not really wanting, it's a crappy day out, it's raining, you don't really want to be outside, but you know that you have to cultivate. So what do? Well, you Pinterest. Okay, how can I set up my garden bed? You pull out a Google article on like how to set up your garden appropriately so that other vegetables or other flowers aren't taking over. That's still part of your holistic practice as a gardener, right? And I think that there's something to be said about every aspect of like the artist and the musician and the construction workers or the engineers or whatever, because there are other ways to do and be present with what it is that they do without actually physically having to create the product.
Yeah, there's different ways to show up.
Yeah. I like that. Different ways to show up.
I think of listening to podcast shows when doing yoga, or listening to music and purposefully enjoying that I'm going to choose music. So I know at the beginning when I was doing yoga with you, I was picking very peaceful music, thinking that that was the only thing I could listen to because it was yoga. And I don't even know where that thought came from. Maybe TV. I'm not certain, but it was all this, I'll say a certain type of music, a certain genre. And then I remember one day thinking, I don't feel that. That's not my mood. I really want to hear Earth, Wind, and Fire. And trying to do my practice to Earth, Wind, and Fire. And it was like, oh my God, I so enjoyed it on a completely different level because I stepped outside of one idea and tried something else. Like you're saying, try something else. And I think for most people, that if you're going to practice yoga your whole life, it's important to know that. Or we can get stuck in one particular way of doing it and not experience it and experience our own bodies in different ways.
Yeah, or if you're not trying something new, then you just become bored and complacent with it. So you think that you don't like it anymore, right? But you're not, yeah. So you're not really exploring the different ways to do it. So it's funny because you guys often refer to this, and I really enjoy it, and it's something that I think about constantly. But enjoying your human experience, right? Like we're all humans and we're all like living this experience and we're living this life together. But what does that look like for each individual? And yeah, sometimes I listen to like Led Zeppelin doing yoga, or prior to obviously the circumstances now when like the hockey games were playing or the basketball games were playing, we have a small house here and there's not a lot of space to get away. But if I want to do a practice on the floor, if I want to roll around on the floor and stretch because my hip's bothering me, I set up in front of the TV. So I've got my partner on the couch watching, the game or whatever, and I'm in front of the TV and I'm just in my own little mind, in my own little zone, right? So yeah, you have to be a human, and you have to be able to enjoy what it is that you're doing. And if you're not, then how can you shift that, and change your mindset? You guys talk a lot about mindset. So how do you shift your mindset and bring like fresh energy back to, what it is that you do?
Well, I think when you're talking about that your partner could be sitting right behind you and the volume of the TV is loud, say, it's a sport event, you want the volume up, or you're listening to a concert. Some things are really much better at a higher volume. They are, right? Nobody
Yeah.
wants to listen to a concert on low.
Yeah.
Then
True.
headphones for the person who's doing their practice, if that can help them, where they're listening to their own music, their own choice, and letting the people in the room around them, if they need silence, if they're reading a book or whatever, checking in to make sure, well, my need is yoga, my need is to stretch, I want to be with you, or I've got nowhere else to go. So how do I manage to make this as comfortable as possible so that I'm not leaving my practice really before I should, or I really need to or want to?
Yeah.
Can I want to ask you a couple questions just to direct the session right now, because we've talked about adaptation essentially, and as you mentioned in the beginning of the show, befriending your house.
Yeah.
What I'd love to do is kind of take those concepts and also break it down to like the smallest degree to show people that it doesn't need to be where you set aside a chunk of a half an hour or 45 minutes to do this practice. How can people get in tune with their body? And I hesitate from saying quick because the intention isn't to quicken things, but if they have pockets of time of 2 minutes between meetings or 3 minutes between, changing over the laundry, like what can they do in their home to befriend it in a short amount of time?
So one thing that pops into my mind, and if we're discussing yoga as like a holistic practice, then I want to talk a little bit about the 8 limbs of yoga. So ahimsa, or nonviolence, is something that we practice in yoga. Nonviolence to self, nonviolence to others around us, nonviolence to the environment. So the one thing that literally popped into my brain was, well, okay, why don't you just like get up and give yourself a big hug?
I love that.
And I say that for a couple of reasons. And like, okay, like,
Oh,
let's
I
be real.
like this so
Okay.
much.
But like, are you fucking kidding me? But seriously, okay. So
Wait
if you
now.
give yourself a hug, you are doing many yoga things at one time. Okay. You are stretching your shoulders and your shoulder blades. Okay. So that's an asana, that's a movement. You're self-loving. Okay. So you're bringing non-violence into self. You're creating awareness and concentrated focus on the movement that you're doing. And then if you just take a moment and breathe, you're also doing pranayama, or breath work, right? Like that's 4 things at once. And that doesn't even have that can be 30 seconds to a minute. That doesn't even have to be, half an hour or an hour practice.
I love that that's how we started.
I so want people to email us and say, I caught my husband in the kitchen, my grandma in the corner hugging herself.
Or my kid.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's the other thing, because currently in the situation, some of us are really like, there's one girl that is, attending my classes via Zoom, and she lives alone,
Mhm.
not working. So, how are you creating touch? And the necessity of touch is super important, right? So I think, just giving yourself a nice hug is a way to feel connected. And then if you can start to think about the people that you would have hugged, or you're getting ready to hug as things shift back to normalcy, embrace that feeling as well of like, oh, I can't wait to hug X person, right? Like wrap
I
your arms around yourself.
So I'm reading this really great book. It's called Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson, and it's all about attachment theories. And if you've gone through any level of psychology, even just Psych 101 in university, most people do go through. With attachment theories, there's been studies done on monkeys where, when they are young, researchers would put a cloth like shape that looked like a monkey in their like little cage or their environment, and the monkeys would gravitate towards this cloth monkey as a mother figure for comfort. And they would also put this wire in that was in the shape, I guess, of a monkey as well, but was completely uncomfortable. And the monkeys for sure gravitated towards this cloth, even if they had no actual mother figure. This was just proving the need for touch, the need for that kind of stimulation. And so, if you are living by yourself, as you've mentioned with this one person, don't discredit the natural need or attachment to this sensation.
Yeah, I love that. My mind kind of goes, to, when a puppy is little and they're being crated or they're being crate trained, they often say if you put a ticking clock inside with the smell of your clothes, that will start to represent sort of like that nurturing mother figure, and they'll start to understand that you're the mother, or you're the father of them as they're getting integrated into your home. So I
But
love that.
it serves as a self-soothing technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's super cool.
I think about, men listening to this right now who might be living alone. And it's like, especially in the Western world, they're taught to be strong and independent and not need these kinds of comforts. And it's just not true. Fundamentally, in our DNA, it's just not true.
Yeah. 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 So I don't know, adaptation and like your surroundings, and give yourself a nice big hug, and you're doing, four, I don't know, maybe all. Those are the four that, popped into my brain of what you're doing. So yeah, that's definitely something that you can do in between things, or throughout the day, I guess.
Can I give an example that I enjoy?
Yeah.
I like taking a block and stretching out my feet. So I sit on the block. You've taught me this. So you put it like where you're like, so that your bum is sitting on it, and how do you describe that, Amanda? I don't know how to describe the poses properly. I'm
Like your
just
feet are
realizing
parallel to the block.
yeah, my feet are flat on the ground with my
Toes pointing backwards. I know how Amanda cues.
yeah, toes pointing backwards with the heel pointing towards the ceiling.
Got it. Look at you.
Yeah. And then, as you would say, rolling out, like bringing your knees together, but then letting the muscles fall away to the outside, so that your legs are moving to the outside, or your muscles are. And I remember for the first several years you told me to do that, and I did not know what in God's name you were talking about. My muscles were going nowhere. And it took me such a long time, one day where my muscle finally moved. And it was like, oh my God, I know what she means about that the muscles will fall away. But I bring that up because when I started yoga around 49, 50 years old, that was, 5 decades of not stretching. So I'm trying to point out for some people that they may get into these yoga poses or doing these things and not feel anything and think, why bother? It doesn't work. It's not doing anything. But it is. It's just that we need for our own muscles and our own memory and time to heal us and to allow that to occur. And when I say it took years, I mean it. Like somebody might think, what? But in that pose, I looked at nature. I put those blocks right in front of my window. And each day I still do it. I did it yesterday. I have my cup of coffee. I eat my supper there sometimes on on that floor in front of that window, and I look outside at nature. But I choose to do a yoga pose while I'm eating my dinner.
Love it.
I read my books there, and I do my telephone treatments in those positions so that I'm not sitting at a desk doing them. I choose to take my material and put it on the floor around me, put my headset on, and get into some poses and just stay there while I'm working.
Yeah. And also too, I mean, just I'm assuming here, Karen, but I feel like I have a good understanding of the type of books that you both read. Um, so when you're reading books that, better yourself, or tips and tools that you can give your clients for, help and health, that is also part of doing your yoga. Right. So if Kelly, if we bring it back to the question that Kelly originally asked about adaptation and, your surroundings, my partner can be sitting right beside me on the couch, and he can be, watching TV or doing whatever he is doing. And I'm sitting on the couch beside him. I don't really want to do yoga. I don't want to do asanas. So what do? Well, I read a quote and I stop and I reflect on that quote, right? Um, I pick up a book and I get so involved in that book, but something that is going to change me fundamentally at my core as a person, right? So fiction is great. I love it. I read it every night before I go to bed, but there is I don't know, I don't want to call them self-help books, but there are books to change your being, to help yourself grow. And when you're reading types of books like that, that's yoga, right? Because essentially yoga is meant to connect your body, mind, and your spirit. And how else do you do that? By learning about self, or learning how to change self, or learning about habits of self that probably are a bit toxic and you might need to shift.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can sit in asana and you can read those books, or you can simply sit on the couch and be lazy and read those books, and you're still doing yoga on a certain level.
Cool. I wanted to go back to when you mentioned ahimsa, so nonviolence. And I wanted to bring that back to the way that people move around their home, from task to task. So, like the to from, right? So, if you're sitting at your dining room table and you're doing your work because that's your new office space, do you fly up and then you're darting into the kitchen and your movements are sudden and jarring? Because that is not practicing being where you are. That's not practicing intentional movement, right? And in essence, it is quite violent to your own energy to be moving that swiftly or that unintentionally.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Also, too, I would kind of just like offshoot on that. You're so involved in a task and then the phone rings, right? And how that might shift your energy as well. So do you and then answer the phone and then put that energy on the person that called you? Or do you take a moment and you calm and then answer the phone, so that
Mm-hmm.
you're not pushing that energy onto the person that's calling you?
Oh, I
um
love the fact that you're referring to this as yoga.
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. My nose is leaking. Yeah, 100%. So I love, Kelly, that you brought that up. We had a delivery yesterday in the mail. I was in our porch. I didn't even realize that I was reading a book. And then, yeah, and then all of a sudden,
Cute.
all I can hear is like the door opening and slamming. So, my partner picks up the package and I go inside. Well, what was that? And like, it was an exciting package, but he's like, I got my package. So it was interesting. I went from like jarring, like, what was that? And then I walk into his energy and he's like, I'm so excited. So yeah. And if you're living with multiple people, again, how are you interacting with each other? So I think I think.
It's interesting though, Amanda, because knowing your personality, you may have felt jarred, and a lot of people's first response or emotional response to being jarred is anger, because it triggers our fear response, right? And so a lot of people may get up and walk towards the partner saying, "What was that?" and not be able to shift into that person's excitement because their fear got triggered so quickly, so abruptly. If they don't have the emotional intelligence to understand, oh, I've registered that I'm now safe, then there's no shift, right? And so we can still be mad at the person for being excited because that's a really high, elevated level of emotion that we're still not ready to be in.
Mm.
And I think it's important that if you're listening, are you one of those people? If you startle quickly, whether you've had trauma, whether it's, physical or emotional, do you get triggered into anger faster, or your fight or flight, instead of being able to, like you say, calm and then approach?
Oh, I like the fact that you could maybe insert a timeout there, and maybe you do have that response, and then you put yourself into a timeout and go, oh shit, just lost my cool. I need a timeout. Give yourself the timeout, breathe, yoga, do what you need to, pause for a moment, recognize your energy and that you were stimulated, as you said, fight or flight and fear, and then choose what you want. Choose it. Or as you said, you noticed your partners and you noticed what actually was going on, and that is reality, and then make a choice how you want to respond to it.
I also think about the parents who are home right now with their children. And let's say one partner is still working via conference calls or, things like this. And so for a brief period of time, one partner is working and the other is sort of, watching the children. And let's say the children are young and, one of them, like, I don't know, gets really excited. Or I'm also thinking if that one parent is in a different room and they hear a big bang, right? What energy is happening there with the person working and then the partner who is with the children? And how are they coping with that right now?
Like as
Because
a team?
I hope so. And I hope that maybe in all of this, and I kind of said at the beginning, like, there's going to be cameos of my dog, and my partner's coming home for lunch, and there's things that are happening in the background that I really hope that if in this time, if the person that's working and that's on that conference call can just say, I just need a minute to check in and make sure that my family is okay. And like the employer or the other employees that they might be having this conference call with, give them that space in order to do that, because it's such a weird time right now, and we all, like you said, Kelly, like, you want to make sure that everybody feels safe.
Well, I think too, one of the things that we haven't talked about in that example is how this is really highlighting whether or not trust exists in relationships. Because if I'm the one on the call and my children are, making a kaboom noise in the back, I'm evaluating very quickly in my brain as to whether or not I believe my partner can handle that or will handle that, because those are two separate things.
Yeah.
And people, that's being put in people's face, and someone may be quick to excuse themselves to say, I have to go check on that, even though my partner's the one looking after the children.
The partner could be in the washroom.
Well, yeah, it could be an honest issue, but again, that's highlighting the level of whether or not trust actually exists in the relationship right now, which is important. And I think hopefully people are really paying attention to that.
I also want to talk a little bit about like what you said before about how that triggers and it brings up fears and emotions and stuff. And I question right now if people are generally feeling anxious because we're so not aware of really what's happening with this virus. So that's triggering so much anxiety. But then in our homes, right, there's this macro global virus, and then in our homes is this micro, circumstance. And I'm going to bring it right back to like calm and approach. I think, Karen, is what you said, and I wrote it down because I think that's great. Breath work. Oh, sorry, Kelly, it was you. Breath work is the number one thing that we focus on when we do any type of yoga. And breath really scientifically is proven now. I mean, there's so many studies out there what breath can do. 10 slow, steady, calm breaths in and out can focus our brain back to the work that we're doing. If we're feeling tired and lethargic, it stimulates the oxygen in the brain, right? Brain flow. It also allows that nervous system to calm down from that fight or flight response, right? So that jarring feeling that we get, or when we're caught off guard, or it triggers that fear in us. That sort of that calm and approach. So you stop, you breathe, this is our prana, our breath, our pranayama, and then you approach the situation. So just that alone can be your yoga for the day.
And it can also mean, in a very realistic way, that you don't create more drama, you don't create more problems than ever needed to be. Because sometimes when we don't value the breath and we just respond, we hurt people and we destroy or we create problems.
Can I go? Okay, I'm really excited about this because this is going to sound really odd, but I wanted to kind of contrast what you guys are saying. There is such thing as brain dead, and that's a lack of oxygen to the brain. And I think people, maybe don't think of breath in that extreme view, and we forget that when we don't breathe, we are shorting the oxygen to the brain, and that results in brain dead. And we have to consciously give that breath to ourselves to stay alive. The other thing I wanted to bring up is I had just finished the book Blink, and there's a really, really cool example in this book where they were doing studies of heart rates in police officers, and they were showing that when you get to a certain threshold of a heart rate that's just way too high, the brain actually goes into extreme focus. But if you are not trained, very, very well trained, to focus on the right things, we focus on obscure details that may be completely irrelevant to the situation and don't actually allow us to cue into the most important things going on. So in this study, they were showing that when it comes to being in like a shootout almost, when the heart rate gets to a certain point, they're not even seeing facial expressions, which indicates intention. They actually ended up just focusing on a person's shoulder or leg and had no cues to what was going on in the bigger picture. So if we're bringing that into the home right now, and you are in your fight or flight response, and you're allowing that heart rate to get up to a certain point out of natural anxiousness or being triggered by a partner or a child, or just the stress from working at home, for the first time in your life, technology, then you may actually be in an intense focus in the brain, but on something that is not helpful. And then you're bringing that energy to the people in your home.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I flashed to sort of, I flashed to Grey's Anatomy.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And just sort of what Karen said about, like, I hope that, you know, my surgeon is so concentrated, like focused on the task at hand, um, that, you know, they don't have time to think about anything else. And then I think about those, you know, scenes in Grey's Anatomy where, you know, they're really showcasing that. You know, there are so many things that they're looking at one particular, you know, in one particular scene where there's a trauma incident and they have to scan and figure out, okay, this is what I need to deal with right away.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of, you know, this is kind of like secondhand, and we can get somebody else to, you know, and then to come in, and or I can delegate. And I think, yeah, I think in a home situation, really being able to sort of figure out, you know, okay, this is what needs to be done right now. This is what can wait, and this can be put on the back burner to another day.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, most of us, I would say, you know, most of us maybe don't have those coping tools. So it's really nice that you guys are offering these shows in order to help
Mm,
people
thank you.
with their daily lifestyle and how they can kind of shift and change.
You guys just described what I feel like when I'm doing yoga. Like, here I'm really enjoying the conversation, and then I think I can see myself on my mat where certain muscles are screaming and saying focus here, and then there are other muscles in my body going, I'm not in such a crisis, I'm okay, you don't have to focus on me, this right ankle and these toes are okay, but my ass is going, pay attention to me.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
glute is like, you've been sitting all afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good body awareness example.
Oh,
Yeah.
my glute talks to me clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
It's funny that you word it that way, Mom. Like you've given a personality to your muscles.
Oh,
Because
all the time.
I remember being in your class, you know, one of the first times in well, when I moved back to North Bay, and you would say, let your muscles talk to you. And I remember thinking like, oh, is this going to be fluff? And then you hear your first muscle actually scream and you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they do talk. Hey, girl, pay
Yeah,
attention
she
here.
meant that.
Yeah. It's funny, also right now, you know, people are out, they're biking, they're walking their dog, they're trying to figure out life at the moment and how to keep themselves busy. So a lot of people are walking more often, and they're waking their muscles up that might have been
Mhm.
dormant. And they're then starting to unmask pain in their body as well, because maybe they're walking improper, maybe they have old pair of shoes, or you know, plethora of reasons at this point. So yeah, certain muscles are just going to be screaming, and other
Mhm.
muscles are going to be like, no, this is my strong muscle, and I will support you. Like, I
Mm,
got you, as all these other things wake up, right?
that's cool.
Um, yeah, I really love that. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add on to what you were saying in that, you know, people might be actually like exercising more and waking up these muscles. But I think the other component is working from home in ergonomically unfriendly
Mm-hmm.
environment. You know, I know for myself, I've been eating a lot of my meals sitting on the floor, crouched in a position that's not good for the digestion, right? Or if, you know, people are working from a dining room table and their, you know, their hands are higher than they actually should be for typing. So certain muscles are waking up because we are not in work environments that are actually conducive to the work that we're used to doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it's important to figure out how to adapt to that and address those issues.
So it's really cool because there was a local business that saw sort of this shift, and they moved, basically all of their staff members are now working at home. And they sort of, they reached out to me and they were like, hey, like, would you do some virtual classes for our staff members at home? Because like Kelly said, like they're not set up ergonomically friendly. And, you don't have the opportunity to get up and go to the water cooler, or get up and go and get a coffee, or, get up and go and talk to your coworkers, or, just sort of stand around and chit chat. So they asked if I would do this, and I was like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. So for 15 to 20 minutes twice a week, I'm tapping into their private virtual program, and I'm moving them. This is how you stretch your shoulders. This is how you stretch your neck. This is what you can do sitting down at your desk throughout the day. Some simple movements that will, stimulate your brain. It'll move your body, and it'll get you functioning at a higher level than just sort of sitting and being stagnant at your desk, where it's not friendly. It's not body friendly. And then muscles scream in a different way when it's not friendly, right?
I think some people are sitting on a couch with a coffee table in front of them trying to work, and
Yeah.
they're bent forward and over, and in where the psoas muscles are being and the stomach muscles are being compressed all day long, and how they would need to be able to stretch to open the psoas so that they, one day just can't get up.
Yeah.
That
And I
because the
also,
muscles have seized.
yeah. And I also think that, well, no, flat out, no, the individuals that were potentially, going to massage, or going to chiro, or going to physio prior to this to work through some of that tension and stress and tightness and injuries or whatever was going on in their body, they don't have access to that anymore, or currently. So that's a whole different ballgame when now you're sitting at home, you're not set up right. Maybe even at work, they weren't set up right in the first place. So now it's just inflammation in the body, and, really, really struggling for pain management because they don't have access to their health team.
I want to make a small point here, but I think a good one. I think this is equally as good for children to participate in, because for me, some of the things that I think about are when we say to a child, where do you hurt? So maybe we weren't there when we saw something occur and they're crying and something is wrong, but we don't know how to address it. We don't know if this is an emerge visit, a doctor's call, a waited out moment. We just have no idea. And we want to say to this little human being, where do you hurt? And if they have no concept of what a muscle feels like versus a bone, if they don't know what it feels like for something to be tight versus actually injured, or what is a normal stretch versus an injury, then they really don't know how to help them. They really have no idea. Now, fast track that. So that somebody listening to this might go, yeah, that makes damn good sense, Karen, you go girl. And we think, yeah, that's right for my 3-year-old. Well, now I'm referring to the 80-year-old or the 60-year-old or the 50-year-old or the 30-year-old who's also never done yoga. And we still expect them to know because they're adults, but they've had no skill set and no experience to identify a good feeling versus a not good feeling, or healthy versus unhealthy.
I think that is a great point.
Yeah, and they're going to go to emerge or call the doctor's office and say, I did this. Because we end up saying to them what we did because we don't know how to explain to them what it feels like. Or it's
Yeah.
such a general feeling, it hurts, and what kind of pain, what level of pain. If you had to rate it from 0 to 10, they have no idea.
And my anatomy teacher, or the kinesiologist that I work with as far as yoga goes, she often says where the pain is not the problem.
Right.
And so if we're 3-year-old, 80-year-old, 60-year-old, whatever age we're at, if we're saying, oh, I've got, this pain in my elbow, which is like a legit thing for me these days. Oh, I've got this pain in my elbow. Well, that's great. I can show you where it is. I can tell you, oh, on a scale of 1 to 10 today, it feels like maybe a 7. It's kind of throbbing. Well, we don't know enough, because we don't have access to our health team at this point, that maybe this is a nerve and it's connected to your neck.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
repetitive
So it's
injury
really
from your gardening. Yeah.
yeah, right. It's your posture, right? I call this like turtle head, right? Where it's you're sticking your chin forward and then you're stressing your neck, and that is radiating down into your elbow or into your fingers, or just some different examples. So yeah, we don't have that knowledge. And then when you start well, a lot of the times I'll ask, okay, well, somebody says, oh man, that really hurt. Well, okay, but how did it hurt? Like, what do you mean it hurt? Is it burning? Is it pinching? Is it throbbing? Is it like sharp shooting pains where you can't breathe through it because it's like it hurts so bad? Well, those are all different feeling scales.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you address that? So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to just say too, because people might be like, I'm panicking now. They're talking a lot about pain.
yeah.
This is a result if you're not addressing on a daily basis your body.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you taking breaks? Are you moving intentionally?
Mm-hmm.
Are you educating yourself as to little things that you can do that add up in a day to take care of your physical body? That's the solution.
And just speaking about working from home and what that might look like, little things throughout the day that you can do. You can take a minute and just breathe, get the brain focused. Get up, give yourself a nice big hug, get the shoulders moving, and then also too, like, just getting up in general.
Mm-hmm.
Getting up, doing a couple laps in your house, and coming and sit back down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that you take a lunch break, right? That's so important. I feel like a lot of people would just work right through because there's this guilt factor of, oh, well, what if my colleague is, messaging me or emailing me and I'm not responding? They're going to think that I'm not at my desk working.
Mm-hmm.
What? You're allowed to get up and move around.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be glued to the chair the entire time. So really making sure that you're taking that lunch hour, and doing something with it that's productive.
And breaks, period. I know, like, you take breaks at work, right? Like you said, there's water cooler, there's getting up to pee, there's, bringing a file into another room and asking a question to someone. Those are natural parts of people's jobs.
Yeah.
I like to stand in door frames, put my hands on each side and lean in to do a stretch in here, because if I'm sitting down and I'm writing for clients and I'm pulling forward, then when I walk out or go up into the kitchen or go into the bathroom, I can stand at a door frame, put my hands like that, and step into it, just a step. And I know at first, Amanda, I wanted to step way into the room and give it a good stretch. And then, oh my God, the next day I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You only have to step in ever so slightly to get a stretch. So I was overdoing it, thinking if I overdo it, that's good. And it's like your muscles are going, no, 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 no. Be gentle, be kind to me. Don't be mean to me. So there are little things, like I said, about taking the block or taking a pillow and sitting on it, with my knees bent underneath me, just to do just a stretch like that, just to watch TV or to sit and read a book. There are simple things that people can do around their home.
Yes. Yeah, and so I've got two. Well, I remember one thing about what you just said about leaning into the door. I also remember being younger, being a child, and pushing your hands into the door frame and then walking.
Yes.
And your arms would feel like they would float, because that's fun too,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Bring play into your day, you know.
Mhm.
And then sort of, also that over stretching. I'll very often say, and when I'm teaching or in a lot of my classes, okay, give me 100%. What does 100% feel like? So if you're leaning into a door and you're giving it your all, there's nowhere for you to go at that point. And if you're just starting to wake your body up because it might have been dormant in certain areas, that over or that 100 or that 110% is going to be more detrimental to you in the long run than if you just ease off to 80%. And then as you start to feel the sensations in your body wake up, then you can stop, you can calm and approach, and then maybe ease a little bit more into it, right? So it really is about backing off before you can move forward, right? Things always sort of, you got to wake things up before they're going to get better. And, sometimes it takes 5 years, right, Karen?
Yes, it does. And I think that has to speak to some people who value perfection and think
Mm-hmm.
that perfection is the 100% stretch right through the door frame. So that I'm
Yes.
in the other room. I'm going to go get a cup of tea in the other room. I'm stretching so bloody much. That some people have that idea that that's perfect, and that yoga is not about that being perfect. It's about kindness, and it's about awareness.
Yes.
I,
And
sorry, go
love,
ahead. Yeah.
love.
Hmm.
It really is.
Gentle. Yeah.
Yep.
Self-compassion. I think too, this isn't going to be like a great metaphor, but I think about the people who know that they need a coffee before they start their day,
Mm.
and how diligent they are with that, and how it's like they even teach the people in their lives, like, I don't engage in conversation before I've had my first coffee. And it's like that's your backup. Take your time, figure out what you're doing, how you're approaching your day before you actually approach.
Mm-hmm.
That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that metaphor.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, so if we're kind of thinking about, when when I originally sat down and like talked to you guys about this or sent you some things that I wanted to discuss, it was building a home practice and what that might look like. You can do that. I think I even did a video of like sitting on the chair and doing yoga from a chair. You can do that on your couch, right? You can, not to like instruct anybody, but you can, sit on the edge of your couch, right on the edge. You can heel toe your feet and your knees really, really wide. And then you can just like flop in between your legs. And that is a beautiful forward bend for all of your back body, all of your back muscles, the neck muscles, the hips, right? So something as simple as that, or even standing up and putting your hands on the seat of your chair or on your coffee table and move into sort of like a half forward bend, right? Hamstrings, calf muscles, fascia of the feet. There's an unwinding there that happens. And those are two simple things that you can do. Befriending your home, befriending your surroundings, and kind of starting to build somewhat of a home practice. I'll go back to what I said at the very beginning, meaning like it takes dedication and action. So you can be so dedicated in your brain, but without the action, it's not going to do anything, right? So what it really takes is for you to show up. And I think that speaks a lot about the podcasts, all of your podcasts, your Sips of Sanity, your Coffee with the Sarlos. You got to show up to your own life. Wake up to your own life.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's important. And again, like, it doesn't have to be complicated,
Mhm.
right? It's
I know. Oops, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know there, like my pelvic stretches are in my agenda as my habit tracker every
Mhm.
week. And there are a lot of days where I will crawl into bed and be like, fuck, I forgot to do those. And I will take 2 pillows and, do that,
Mhm.
where you let the knees fall open. And I'll just use the pillows as my blocks to
Mhm.
support. And I'll read my book. And that is still showing up at the nth hour, and being playful and creative and gentle with myself, and that's another way that you can still be there for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated at all.
Hmm.
It could be something very, very simple. Um, I would, if you are both open to it, I would really love to talk you through about a minute of breath work. And
Sure.
if we want to get on with our days, we can do that.
Hmm.
But maybe for your listeners, they're just like they don't understand what big deep breaths are. So I can just take a minute and sort of coach you both through it and your listeners through it if you'd like to do that.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So you're both sitting. Why don't you place your hands on the tops of your thighs? And for anybody listening who's sitting, just sit up nice and tall. Place your hands on the tops of the thighs and then just close your eyes. Okay. Now this is going to feel really weird, but forget about it. This is about you. This is about self-love. This is about taking a moment for yourself. So start to bring awareness to the forehead and relax all the little muscles of the forehead. And as the muscles of the forehead relax, start to relax the little muscles around the eyes. And then start to relax your cheeks. And then the little muscles around the lips relax. And then start to think about your jaw. The jaw relaxes. So you part your back molars slightly. So the bottom jaw drops away from the top jaw. And the tongue begins to relax inside the mouth. And if you can picture yourself standing underneath a waterfall or the nice soft drizzle of a shower head, you just want to let the water rush over your head, down your shoulders, down your back. So there's almost a softening that happens in the tops of the shoulders. Good. And then you feel the air move in and out of your nose. When you breathe in, the air feels cool. When you breathe out, the air feels warm. And you just stay connected to that feeling of the air moving in and out. Bring your mind down to your lungs or your chest. And when you take an inhale, feel your lungs lift and open and expand. Your chest rises up. And then as you exhale out, your chest falls and your lungs sort of contract or sort of squeeze in towards the center line of the body. And then bring your awareness down to your rib cage. This is where your diaphragm is located, underneath your rib cage. And so when you take a big breath in, you feel your diaphragm or your rib cage expand out to the sides. You feel your lungs rise up and open. And then you exhale and everything deflates. Your diaphragm deflates, your lungs deflate. So big, deep inhale from the diaphragm into the lungs all the way up to the collarbones, and then exhale out very slowly. So we try as we breathe to make our exhales longer than our inhales. So maybe breathe in for a count of 6. Big full breath through the diaphragm, through the lungs, up to the collarbones, and then exhale out for a count of 12. So slow it down. Good. And just try this one more time. So big, deep breath all the way up. And remember to slow down that exhale. Good. And then when you're finished your exhale, just gently open your eyes. Tell me how you feel.
Good night.
Well, I might not want to go back to work. I feel good.
Whew. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Amanda, before we sign off and, as you said, get on with our days, you have a full body relaxation available on your website. Is that correct?
Yeah, so right now, actually, this morning I was revamping my website. So I have unpublished my website. It will be published in the next couple of weeks. I'm just changing things
Okay.
around. However, it's still available for purchase. Yes.
Okay.
And if people would like to access that, they can email me at connect@rubyyoga.ca.
I will put that in the show notes.
Perfect. And it's about 9 minutes, 10 minutes. And I really talk them through laying down throughout the entire body, right from their head to their toes.
Safe for children, yes?
100%.
Yeah, good. Okay, so if you're listening and you enjoyed that breathing exercise, she does a head to toe one, safe for all ages.
I would like to point out that I've been watching you on YouTube, and that you sent me your videos, and that I take those at random when I have moments and at my own schedule, and do your practice, as well as when you are teaching it through Zoom. But I just wanted to pass that along to people, that they can also find you on YouTube.
I've got those links from a previous email that you've sent me. So I'm going to put those up with your permission in the notes as well. So if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening through Patreon, we'll have those up as well and on the website.
Good.
So they can just, it's a click away to see your beautiful face and have your brilliant cues and instructions.
The last thing I want to say about this show is that one of my favorite things, because that's what I'm now doing in my head, is naming my favorite things about the show, is is that you talked about a home practice, and you talked about doing that in all these different rooms and using part of your home, and that's truly a home practice. I had always thought a home practice meant that I had to have a yoga mat and the proper blanket and props, or I couldn't do yoga. And so I'm certainly learning through you that you don't need anything like that. You can use your couch and your chair and your toilet and your bed and your hardwood floor and door frames and everything around you to be in touch with yourself, so that you're a kinder person to be around for other people, but also so that we are less stressed during this time on earth.
Yes. Yes.
Good summary, Karen.
I love that. And just to follow up on that point, when we were able to be in a room together, I did a whole workshop, how to build your own home practice. And there was this key concept that Karen just said, that people really thought that they needed to have a room designated to their practice. And that's not the case. I sometimes don't even practice with a mat. I just practice on the rug, our rug. And then, sometimes I don't have my blocks kicking around, so I'll just use the coffee table. I also say this a lot when I was a poor starving student and I was just sort of finding yoga. I wasn't really introduced to yoga props. So I was using textbooks, school books as props,
Totally.
right? The ground up to you, as opposed to you just trying to force yourself down.
What a great use for a stupidly expensive book.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome.
I think if people at home working with their binders going, yeah, okay, I've got binders.
Yeah. Cool. You do not need, you don't need a Zen den, right? You you find a nice area. I love, Karen, that you said, you found an area where you can look outside at nature. I think that's great.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us again.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I was humbled. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing your experience, your knowledge, and your very kind and gentle spirit to our show.
And humor.
Thank you.
Yes. Love laughing.
Have a wonderful Hogwarts day.
Aww. Thank you. Also, one more thing. People can find me on social media because I do post some videos on Instagram for anybody wanting to do a little bit of like short home practices. So my hashtag is at Ruby Yoga Amanda on Instagram.
Cool. I'll put that in there as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we love you and we're so grateful. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Well, we sure hope that you enjoyed the show with our guest today, Amanda Cooley. We hope that you found some very beneficial things out of why you can start or continue or share a home practice where you benefit from yoga, the breathing techniques, and the tons of stuff Amanda talked to you about.
Yeah, and we hope your definition of a yoga lifestyle has changed as well. Awesome. Okay, so if you have questions or comments about today's show, you can email us at info@bysarlo.com. Amanda did mention in the show that if you do want to follow her on social media, her handle is at Ruby Yoga North Bay on Instagram. You can also find her at Ruby Yoga on Facebook as well. She's got some excellent posts, individual yoga practices that you can watch on YouTube if you're interested in that. We also want to thank all of our listeners, no matter where you're listening or watching from today. We appreciate that you've joined us. We hope that that we're keeping you good company. And please email us if you have questions or comments at info@bysarlo.com. Enjoy your weekend.